Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully you're cozy at home on this snowy afternoon. Today, we are presenting our final workshop. The theme is College Options for Students with Developmental Disabilities and Autism. My name is Marie Frietze. I'm an advisor at the Community College of Vermont, and today I'll be talking with you generally about what will be useful for high school students to know when they're transferring into college if they have a disability, and some useful tips for those of you making that transition. So one of the things that I think is primarily helpful is understanding kind of the differences between high school and college. So high school students are served with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so IDEA. And so the IDEA law, oops, forgive me, essentially requires that all students with disabilities have right to success in college. And those students often have or should have IEPs or 504s, and they have a lot of support around them via their teachers who can possibly modify curriculum so that they can have success in high school. Whereas in college, students are receiving accommodations in classes based on a completely different law. And so this is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And this is a law that requires colleges and universities to provide equal access to education. And so the difference there is equal access versus success. And so this is something that I think is really important for students making that transition into college to understand, is that it really requires the students to have some advocacy, self-advocacy. And it often requires the students to disclose their disability so that they can understand the process for receiving accommodations. The other thing that is helpful to know is that the curriculum cannot be modified or changed for a student in college. So sometimes in high school, an example might be if the assignment is to write a 5-page essay, a modification of that might be to write a 2.5-page essay. In college, that's not necessarily going to be the case. The students will be required to meet the objectives of the course. And so if the essay is 5 pages, that will be the assignment. However, it is the college's responsibility to make sure that student has access to the information and tools they need so that they can complete that assignment. Instructors have academic freedom in college, whereas in high school, there might be more of a pre-laid curriculum that they need to follow. And in college, progress is monitored by the student, whereas in high school, progress is actually monitored by the high school staff. And of course, behavioral expectations are the same for all students in college. This visual is meant to kind of outline what I've just been describing. And so you'll see, simply based on the size of the circle, the responsibilities of the different parties in high school. And the next slide will be responsibilities in college. So you'll notice in this slide, the circle that's the largest is the school has the most responsibilities to the student. Because they're under this IDEA law, they're really doing a lot of the work around the student to make sure that they're getting the access that they need. So they're identifying the need, they're testing the students, they're modifying assignments, they're paying for testing, checking in with the students frequently, making adjustments as needed, and guaranteeing success. And then you'll see parents and guardians are also doing that work. They're advocating on behalf of the student. They're often making decisions for the student. And oftentimes in the high school setting, the student is kind of circled around, or those folks are around that student supporting them. Whereas you'll see in college, it's almost the opposite. And this is definitely something that requires some preparation and an adjustment period and getting used to. The largest circle here is that of the student. And so the student has a lot more responsibilities in college when they're approaching their schoolwork. So it is up to them, like I mentioned earlier, for them to self-identify. They also need to provide documentation. And so this could look like a variety of things, and I'll get into that in a few slides. They need to be advocating for themselves, whereas in high school, they had a lot of folks around them advocating for them. But this will certainly be an adjustment in college. So they're managing their own time. They're often making their own decisions, seeking their own resources. And if any adjustments need to be made to accommodations, it is really the student's responsibility to be checking in about that, rather than, like they had the support in high school, someone else coming in and helping to make those adjustments. The school certainly has some responsibilities, so we need to, the schools need to maintain standards, provide reasonable accommodations, and guarantee access. And then you'll see in this case, at the college level, the parent or guardian is certainly a person who can be a support, but they're not really the ones in the picture anymore making a lot of those decisions. Okay, so how do college students get accommodations in college? So students involve themselves in something called the interactive process. And so that has 4 steps. And so the interactive process, again, requires that the student self-disclose. So that essentially they're telling somebody at the school that they have a disability and they would like to seek accommodations. And so usually at the college, there's a form the student can fill out. There's a website or an email address, some kind of center that the student can go to tell someone and get engaged with this process. They will then provide documentation, and the documentation is something that represents or supports the student's disability. So sometimes that's an evaluative report, sometimes it's a letter from a provider like a doctor or a therapist. Once they've provided that documentation, they will then meet with accessibility services at their college. And that meeting will discuss the barriers that the disability has and creating the accommodations needed for that student to have access. And finally, the 4th step is to develop that plan of accommodations. And that plan is actually intended for the instructors to read so that they can make adjustments to their teaching as needed, depending on what is written in the accommodation. I mentioned the phrase reasonable accommodation, and some people might be wondering what that means. A reasonable accommodation is something that does not fundamentally alter the class requirements. So I gave that example of the essay. If we did change that assignment to reducing the page number, we would actually be altering the class requirements. So we can't be writing accommodations that do that. So like I said before, each student is expected to meet the objectives of the course. But remembering that accommodations are not necessarily making college easier, simply providing access. And it is also important to understand that because every class is different, there are different instructors, different objectives. Accommodations may vary depending on the course. Being prepared for college certainly requires some skills to practice. Time management, which I mentioned previously, self-advocacy, I've mentioned several times. The ability to study independently is certainly a skill, and colleges have resources to help with academics as well. So being able to know who to ask for help and accessing those available resources will be a skill to strengthen as well. Let's see, I will pause here. Do you see any questions in the chat about maybe the differences between high school and college?
And Q&As, I will provide.
Okay, no worries. All right. And I will hand it over to our next presenter.
Hello, my name is Bryan Dague. I'm with the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion at the University of Vermont. And I'm going to go over some programs that are designed specifically for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism. So we have a post-secondary ed consortium, of all these different groups. So we kind of coordinate our efforts, like in presentations like this, and we meet on a regular basis. So I'm just going to talk about the three in the middle, which are college campus-based programs. But just to mention, there is Project Search, which is a high school vocational training program, a transition program. And then there's a Peer Teacher and Learning, which is a lifelong training and learning program. So let's see. Go the no, I'm just go the other way. Okay, so I'll start with the Think College program. So that's at the University of Vermont. So this was started in 2010 as a federal grant because there were a number of programs like this around the country, and they wanted to do a demonstration project to see how effective they would be. So there were 27 programs funded in 2010, and since then there have been a number of different programs funded. So currently there's about 300 programs in the United States, that are designed specifically for students with intellectual or developmental disabilities to attend college. So we were funded for 5 years. Now we're funded through program fees. And it's a 2 to 3 year certificate of college studies program. Although we are starting to see some students that are full-time matriculated students that are looking for support from our program. So we do have some that are degree seeking students. Currently I have 13 students that are in the program right now. And we've had over 50 who have completed the certificate. They can attend any class at the University of Vermont. We don't have any required classes, so they can choose from the thousands that are offered. So we've covered academic courses over 25 different departments and 30 vocational internships. And the key to our program is peer mentor support. So we hire UVM students to provide the one-to-one support to students. So the criteria for getting into the programs are, it is transition age, so generally age 18 to 26 is usually what we're looking at for the age range, although that's not set in stone. We have had some students that are a little bit older than that. Documentation of a disability in need of support, transportation, we do not provide that. And then students do have to demonstrate some functional communication and basic literacy to attend the classes. And students have to have some level of independence and motivation, flexibility. College is a lot different, as Marie mentioned, from high school. And the big thing is really just students wanting to continue their education. That's the biggest thing that I look for. Okay. Student expectations. So enrollment in the Think College program is privilege. It's not an entitlement. And students are expected to follow the same rules, code of conduct as all the other students. So as Marie mentioned, there's accommodations, but not modifications. So students, the classes are not changed for our students, but they can get accommodations through the Student Accessibility Services Office. So we have 4 pillars that we address, in this program. So first being the academic. So all students enroll in typical classes at the University of Vermont. I mentioned the peer mentor support, which I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. The other part is social and recreational activities. There's a lot going on at this campus. We want students to have more of a full college experience so they can participate in social and recreational activities and they have access to most of things on campus. The third area is life skills and self-advocacy to improve daily living skills and increase independence and confidence. And then the fourth part is career skills and work experience. So to explore careers, develop employability skills, and establish a career plan. So the peer mentors, so that's the key. When we set up these programs, one of the things the federal government was looking for were to be really inclusive programs. They didn't want them to be set aside programs. So in order to do that, the best way to be inclusive is to have support provided by fellow students. So we hire University of Vermont students to provide the support. And what they do is they'll attend class with the students so they can help with note taking and small group work and things like that, helping communicate with the instructors, prepare for class and plan for the assignments, help them with study and review their coursework. Then a lot of the social things are really kind of developing relationships with their peers. And they really support and encourage the students with high expectations in a strength-based way to foster independence. And basically just helping, navigate, college life. So we've been operating this program for about 12 years now. And we've seen it having, a big impact kind of overall. So obviously it helps the students that are in the program. But given sort of that inclusive nature of the program, we've had a big impact on the college and the university in general. At this point, I've had over 170 students work as peer mentors in the program since we started. About half of the students are in college of education or social services, but the other half are not. So we have political science majors and animal science majors. So we have a number of different students that are providing mentor support. And then it's been important for them, as a learning experience as they continue their careers and often go on to graduate school. For the instructors, they've learned to incorporate more universal designs for learning and kind of challenging, their methods of instruction. And in the college overall, it's mentioned it's just been a big, we've been a big student employer, and it really increases the, the diversity within our university. So it's had some big impact. And on a bit larger scale, on an international level, we've had a number of these programs in the United States. But in Europe, they don't have a lot of these right now. So they're looking to kind of replicate and expand that. So we've been fortunate to last year go to Austria, Salzburg, Austria, and present on our program. And then our post-secondary ed consortium received an international award from the Zero Project a number of years ago, based on our collaboration and looking at post-secondary options for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that's the Think College program. And now I'll just talk about some of the other options. So Think College is at the University of Vermont. When we got the grant, we had our program here at UVM, but then we also had a satellite program at Johnson State College. Later that turned into College Steps program. So it's kind of a replicated program, almost exactly like Think College at the University of Vermont. But they've replicated. So now they're at Johnson State, Lyndon State, and Castleton University. They have addressed basically the same 4 pillars that we do here at UVM. So looking at academic enrichment, social integration, independent living, and work experience. Typical for ours, the eligibility is documentation of social communication or learning disability, interest in pursuing their academics, and aspirations of independent living and vocational autonomy after graduation. So the goal of all of these programs is really to help students to increase their skills, and expand their interests so they can get better jobs when they finish these programs. So very similar. A third program is the Succeed program with the Howard Center. They have similar components of the education, career development, campus life, but the main focus is residential and independent living. So all the students that participate in the Succeed program live with that program and learn those independent living skills. Similar eligibility criteria, Medicaid waivers generally used to pay for the program funds for that. And similar to all these programs, it is a voluntary program. You know, it's not an entitlement. So Mark Pryor is the director of the Succeed program at the Howard Center. These are some photos of their living facilities and their supports. They've been very successful in getting students, you know, they start off living in the the houses that they have, then they move to apartment programs, and then they've been extremely successful helping them to get Section 8 housing and independent living out in the community. So the funding for all of these programs kind of varies a bit, but there are program fees to continue the program. So that could be Medicaid waiver, the Developmental Disabilities Services Organization, if the state can provide some funding. And students can use their IDEA funds if they're still in high school to participate in these programs. And then PASS plans, ABLE accounts, or just private pay. So those are program fees for running like the Think College program and the College Steps program and the Succeed program. But then the tuition is extra, so that's on top of that. And that's where VSAC has been very helpful. I think I have to update this slide because I think the grants are higher now, the non-degree grant. And then Hireability, Voc Rehab has been providing up to $2,000 per year of assistance that goes toward tuition. PASS plans and ABLE accounts can be used. The dual enrollment, so if students are in high school, they can get up to 2 classes paid for by the state. And then there is an option for auditing the classes. So at UVM, it's the same price, you know, whether you take it for grade or if you audit. But for a lot of our students, audit is a good option for them because they get anxious about the grades and things like that. So if they audit the class, we still expect them to do, you know, as much as the work as they can, and it still counts as credit toward their certificate. They just don't get a grade for that. And overall, what these programs have really shown is that students do gain vocational skills that employers are looking for. So employers say they're looking for communication ability, strong work ethic, showing initiative, interpersonal skills, and teamwork. And these programs, you know, do a good job with providing that. So, you know, communication ability, you know, taking courses such as written expression or public speaking has helped them increase their written and verbal skills. All the classes really help them with that. You know, the work ethic, students take typical classes, you know, there are high expectations, and they do complete at least one vocational internship during their programs. The initiative, students must show motivation and initiative to be successful. The interpersonal skills, simply being a university student, provide many opportunities to develop and improve their interpersonal skills. And then teamwork, you know, coursework often involves small group projects. So the programs have been really helpful in helping students to sort of mature, develop a sense of confidence and self-esteem, and just the skills to help them later on when they get employed. So that is it for our presentation. This is our contact information. And if there's any questions, we can follow up with that. So, okay, thanks. So we have our contact information. Mark and Chris were not able to be here today, but you can contact them if you're interested in learning more about the Succeed program or College Steps. You can contact me about Think College, and you can contact Marie about Community College of Vermont. So I think that should cover it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.